Hello and welcome to the Overlanding podcast, a podcast dedicated to vehicle-dependent travel. I'm your host, Andy Smith. Throughout the series, I'll be chatting with adventurous people who have chosen to travel the world by bicycle, motorcycle, car and truck, and maybe even a tractor if we can secure an interview. The aim of the podcast is to discover what motivates people to embark on life-changing journeys and to hear some incredible stories along the way. The Overlanding podcast is available on iTunes, where you can subscribe to get the latest episode direct to your device. Alternatively, you can listen on a whole host of other platforms. You'll find all the links over on our website, theoverlandingpodcast.com. If you like what you hear, please rate and review our show on iTunes, as this helps to boost it up the listings. Hopefully with every episode we'll grow ever more professional, so please bear with us as we find our feet and learn how to do things properly. In this episode, I chat to the cycling scouser, Andrew Rogerson, about his epic charity-fueled bicycle ride from Shanghai to Liverpool, all in aid of the Anthony Nolan charity and specifically a young lad called Charlie Ferns. Andrew and I talk about the importance of social media, cycling uphill, bad Chinese food, being held at gunpoint, and football hooligans, of all things. So please enjoy the show. We are recording. So first things first, the standard question which we always ask. Out of these 5 locations, where would you prefer this interview to take place? A, near a babbling brook in a lush green valley. B, in a little tent on a windy mountain top. C, on a warm beach with the sea lapping at your feet. D, round a nighttime campfire in a forest. Or E, deep in a tropical jungle.
Oh, can I not have them all? I do quite like mountains, so I'll stick to my mountain route and go for them on top of a mountain.
A second to appreciate the sound of the mountaintop. Excellent. Hello, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, great, thanks. Good to hear you. It's been a long time since we last spoke.
It has been a long time since we spoke. I was trying to remember just before, because Emma's out at the moment, and my memory is not particularly good at the best of times. It was Dushanbe, right? We bumped into each other.
If you could see what I'm doing now, I'm zooming in onto a map to find out where it was. And yeah, it was Dushanbe.
Yeah, it was Dushanbe. So, just for our listeners, could you just fill them in as to who you are and what you were doing when we met?
I'm Andrew Rogerson. I cycled from Shanghai in China all the way to Liverpool, England, and it took me 5 months, and it was 10,000 miles, and it was all overland except a little bit crossing the English Channel from Rotterdam to Hull.
From Rotterdam to Hull. And that's quite a long bicycle ride. Had you done anything like that before?
I'd done a smaller cycling, so I'd cycled down the coast of Vietnam, but that was only, I think it was 13 days. But other than that, I'd climbed a few high mountains, the highest in Russia, and the highest in Europe and the highest in Africa. And yeah, mountains is where I started the silly challenges, but yeah, I was just really fancy doing something different, and cycling just absolutely fits me down to the ground. I managed to secure 5 months off work, which was just superb, and then just jumped on and started going.
Yeah, okay. And why did you choose that particular route? Was it a personal challenge, or did it have any kind of symbolic meaning, that particular route? or was it just it was on the one big landmass that it was the furthest you could go without too many flights?
Well, the reason I got 5 months off work was because I work for Jaguar Land Rover, and I'm based in Halewood in Liverpool, and we were opening our first international plant just outside Shanghai. So it was just tying it all together, really. It was just thinking how I could go about getting that amount of time off. So we approached them with a little plan and said, as you launch this plant, let me cycle from it, let me arrive back in our plant. And yeah, they fell for it.
Okay. And there was a charity aspect tied into your bike ride as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the guys we actually work with in Liverpool, his son has been battling leukemia now for around 7 years. And at one stage he needed a bone marrow transplant. So it was up to the Nolan Foundation to find it, which they did, and he's still here today, still fighting leukemia. Sadly, it did come back for the third time. He's just recently got back from Seattle, where he's had treatments that cost £180,000.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's looking good now. It's looking like we may be on top of it, which is fantastic news.
Okay, cool. So that was that. How did the inception of your bike ride come about then? Was the charity aspect an afterthought, or was it something that was driven the kind of bike ride?
No, it was solely about the charity, to be honest. Before I met Robbie, Charlie's the young boy who's got leukemia, and Robbie's his dad. And before I'd met Robbie in work, none of this would ever even enter my mind. And then you hear the story and you realise the battle that the child's going through, and you just feel like you want to do something. And there's a big group of us in work who do things. Back at home in the UK, it's more tends to be quirkier stuff, and then I'll go off and try and do the big silly things that probably one day will kill me. But everything we do is just to raise money. There's a huge emphasis on it all the way through the challenges. We just bug the hell out of people on Facebook and on the rest of social media just to donate what they can. And so far so good.
And so because after we met you, we had had a couple of beers and stuff, and then after a couple of days we parted ways again on the road, and we spent a lot of time following your trip. Your cycle ride had a massive social media following through Twitter, and you had a lot of all the footballers retweeting stuff, sharing stuff, and all kinds of support. How did that support? Was that essential in keeping you going? Did you find the actual cycle ride hard?
I'd say the first bit through China was actually quite easy, and I think I then underestimated how difficult the rest of it would be. You certainly know for yourself how hilly it was around Central Asia and Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. It was just absolutely soul destroyingly difficult. You'd take 2 or 3 days just going up one mountain at one point, and at those points I was just thinking about Charlie and just realising I've got to keep going on. There was no way I was going to quit.
Yeah,
I work in a factory with 4,500 hairy ass men. If I would have quit, I wouldn't have been able to shut my face back and work.
And the support, because I spoke to another cyclist just recently, and certainly there's a different dynamic between cycling and driving a car, obviously, and there's quite a big difference in terms of luxury and physical enjoyment and whatever else. And he said a lot of cyclists get mile fever, where they're literally challenging themselves so much to rack up, like 80, 90, 100 miles a day. Did you find yourself doing that, or did you manage to take?
True, and I was pushing, like I was getting up at like 6, 7 a.m. in the morning, and even though I had all day, I was trying to get the miles in, just at a pointless goal. If I thought if I can get this done at 1, and I would kill myself to get it done at that time, and it was totally unnecessary. So I'd then be sat at the side of a field for 9 hours with nothing to do. But the way I worked was I had destinations every 15 days because I had a pretty tight schedule.
Yeah.
So and I'd just hammer out the miles for that day, and then just, I don't know, either walk around the town if I was in one, or find a nice camping space and just set up my stove and just chill for the day.
Yeah. And before you left, had you prepped for the trip in any way, or do you basically training as you cycle?
Yeah, it really was. I done a little bit of training. I went to Mallorca with a couple of friends. They were kind enough to join me, and we just cycled up hills for a few days. But on the plane back from Mallorca, I was just thinking, I am in no way prepared for this physically. I knew it was when it comes to the admin side of it, and it took a year to plan before I even started the ride. But yeah, I just felt totally unprepared. But the first few days in China just settled my nerves. Then I think my second day was a 90-mile day.
Yeah.
So I knew at that point that I could get the miles in.
Yeah, and that kind of, not lack of preparation, because you were certainly prepared as far as all the paperwork and the logistics goes. But did you feel that you literally just dived in at the deep end? And is there something to say for diving in at the deep end? Because I think a lot of the time certainly a lot of people speak to us about our trip and say, "Oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that." And my reply to them is, "Well, you can." Before we left, we had no idea what we were doing. We had the smallest budget in the world, like as far as people are attempting these kind of trips go, and yeah, we were just all a bit clueless and naive, and we literally just jumped in and just got on with it. And I think there's a lot to say for that, and I think without actually just jumping in and getting on with it, you don't learn things in life, or you don't push the boundaries or of what you're actually capable of. So that trip then, that was just like a massive personal kind of challenge for you, I guess. Was that kind of challenge more important than the actual travel and seeing the countries?
Yeah. I think I've always been a bit pragmatic when it comes to stuff like this. You know, a lot of people look at it from the outset and think, "Wow, that's an incredibly long distance. How are you possibly going to do it? There's too many things that could go wrong." But you know, if you just cut these challenges down into smaller segments, and as I say, I was just taking each day as it comes, and then at a larger point, each 15 days as it comes, it was about getting to that next checkpoint.
Yeah.
The challenge did probably take too much of a precedent at some point. Like I didn't get to see as much of the countries as I was in. Sadly, I was in 19 countries, I thought, in total. But yeah, there's some of them I definitely want to go back and see again properly, without a bike, with a car.
And like those countries, had you done much research on those countries? Certainly through Central Asia, a lot of those countries are really alien to people, to the point where they get them muddled up when they try and pronounce them and invent new ones.
Absolutely. I still can't spell Kyrgyzstan to this day. I'm just looking at a map now to see. There just isn't enough vowels in Kyrgyzstan, really, is there?
No, and too many Zs. So those countries, did they, like, before you went, did you research any of them, or did they fulfill your expectations? Were they what you kind of thought they were going to be?
There wasn't much research. I did look online as much as I could, but I think there's one website called Caravanistan, which seems to be the best source of information.
Yeah.
But it seems pretty fluid, like politically and militarily there. So it's just a case of trying to look as much as possible. But there isn't a lot of information really on the internet about these places because they're so rarely visited.
Mm. But were they kind of what you expected? Were you expecting such large wilderness areas, or?
I was expecting a lot more. I was expecting it to be more like a desert, to be honest. They were really green and lush, and you know the views out to the mountains. That'll be something I'll never forget.
Yeah.
The scenery was just something else. But when it comes to the likes of Iran, you know, a lot of people think, oh, you know, don't go there. Why would you go there? Well, it's a country I've read a lot about for a long time, so I was expecting it to be exactly like it was. The people were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
China was a letdown. I didn't really enjoy China at all. It was 45 days cycling across there, and I don't think I've seen a person smile once. Which is, I couldn't wait to get out the last 15 days. I never thought I'd be so happy to enter Kazakhstan, but I was absolutely thrilled.
Yeah. And do you still kind of feel that way about it? Because certainly when we first drove across Russia, it's a massive country, and you know you're dealing with these kind of vast expanses. And we had exactly the same. We didn't see anyone smile. People were really cold and unfriendly. And at the time, I was like, "Oh man, I need to get out of this country." But now, when I kind of look back at it, it's one of my kind of favourite countries, just because it was so alien and different. Do you still have that kind of resentment towards China, or?
Towards the east part of as I got further west and further into central and northwestern China, it did actually felt the scenery took over. Then the people pretty much stayed the same throughout, to be honest. But the scenery in that part of China, it wasn't something I was expecting at all. The bridge on the last day, I don't know the name of the city, but it was the best road of the whole trip. I just went downhill for about 2 hours. It took me 3 days to cycle up the hill.
Yeah.
I just went downhill for 2 hours. I went under this lovely bridge pass, and I would go back to China, but it wouldn't be Beijing, Shanghai kind of ways. It'd be more like Urumqi and Zhangyi. I think it was the other city I did quite like.
Yeah. So then, how did you get on with the language and stuff? Because were you cycling on your own the whole time, or did you cycle with? Did you meet up with other cyclists? Or
No, I didn't meet any cyclists. Every cyclist I met along the whole 10,000 miles was going the other way, and I'd say, honestly, there must have been around 20 of this. I know I'm more likely to see them because they're passing me, but I feel as though I was going pretty quick. I feel as though I could have caught some people, but no. I'd say around 20, 30 people passed me going the other way, and I don't know if I was just going the wrong way.
Yeah,
like,
well, I can...
if it's more cycled route to go the other way.
Yeah, I'll tell you why that is. Everyone goes east because if you go west, you're cycling into the sun all day long.
That'll explain the sunburn.
Yeah, that'll be why.
But I liked finishing in Liverpool. I didn't want to finish in Shanghai where nobody was there.
Yeah,
so that was my logic for doing it.
Yeah, I totally associate with that. And it's nice. You're heading home. You've got a purpose. To go home. So. Yeah. Okay, and so how did you get on then with the language and stuff? Because certainly, if you take a car to China, you need a guide. So the same rules apply on a bike, or?
Yeah, I'm like I was before I started. This was a pretty weighty guy, and still was when I finished it, to be honest. But I think all of the weight I lost, were about 2.5, 3 stone, was in China, just because I had such problems getting edible food. It was a case of I was walking. It was the rudest thing. I no wonder people hate British people abroad. But I was walking into a restaurant and just walking around people's tables, and as soon as I seen something that looked edible, I'd point at their food just mid-meal and just like hold up the finger to say one. And even that wouldn't work sometimes. They don't seem to have the hand signals we have. Like, they won't have okay or a thumbs up.
Yeah.
So I'd be living off just street food. It was like processed cheese that looked like hot dogs on kebab skewers. Honestly, if I go next time, I'll definitely be getting a guide.
It's funny we had similar problems in Mongolia where you can't read the language. You can't speak the language, so you end up just pointing at something on a menu and just saying, I'll have 2 foods, please. And, and to be honest, from our experience in Mongolia, it didn't really matter which ones you pointed to because it was the same food arrived every time anyway. It was just like sheep fat and I don't know, you struggle sometimes. It was funny, we met up with a motorcyclist and he was really fed up because obviously if you're on a bicycle or a motorbike, it's much harder work than us sat in our car with the windows wound up nice and warm. And he was really knackered. He was really tired out, and we stopped in a little restaurant, had some food, and he was like, I need to eat something other than all this kind of sheep fat. And so he went up to the counter and he started doing chicken impressions to the woman behind the counter. And she was like, okay, yes. And then she brought his food out and it was exactly the same. It was sheep fat, but with a fried egg on top. So
poor guy.
Yeah, gutted.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't a culinary travelling experience. I don't think Iran, the food was really nice. But there's not in Central Asia. There's really, you don't go there for the 5-star Michelin star restaurants.
No. And then through China into Central Asia, then through Central Asia into Iran. How did you find Iran?
Oh, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was that. I mean, I've always loved Germany. I'd been to Germany before this, and it's a country I'll always go back to. But I think if I was to go back to a country, if I could click my fingers and go back to one of the countries now, it would definitely be Iran. Just so many misconceptions about the place. The people are fantastic. You do get the odd person who wants to know where you're from, and as soon as you tell them, you see a bit of anger in their eyes, and they just want to know answers to questions. To be honest, well, that was my experience of it anyway. It didn't manifest as anything violent at all. They just see you as our political system, and as we do to places in the world, especially the Middle East. But you've just got to. Like, I had a guide in Iran. I weren't allowed into Iran unless I had a government guide with me.
Yeah.
So luckily he was able to defuse some of the situations, but there wasn't that many, to be honest, one or two. But yeah, overall the people are absolutely fantastic. Most of the people, their eyes light up when they find out where you are. They hope you're American. Actually, I found out. I realised that they had much more interest in Americans than English.
Yeah.
But yeah, the people are superb. The food's really nice too.
Yeah, the food is amazing in Iran. It's an interesting country, and we found we were just amazed actually, and a little bit upset by their kind of understanding of what we think Iran is. Like we had young guys coming up to us going, "Hi, welcome to Iran," and everyone welcomes you to Iran. Everyone you meet, it's incredible. These young guys would come up to us in a mosque. We were looking around their holy sites, welcome as anything, and then these guys would come up to us and be like, we want you to know that we're not terrorists in this country. We've seen your news.
Yeah, tell people when you get home or something. I got quite a lot.
Yeah. And it's just so sad that they think that we think that, obviously what we're told by the media gets pumped right into us, and then it does travel. But yeah, it's a shame because that is one amazing country. The people are incredible. We found they were the friendliest, most welcoming people that we encountered on the whole of our trip.
Yeah, there's one point actually. I was in a house on the Caspian Sea, and I'm from Liverpool, not the biggest of football fans, but as soon as he found that out, he was looking on his phone. He found out that the Premier League football season kicked off that day, and Liverpool were on TV. So we were just sitting in his house. We were drinking bootleg rum.
Yeah.
And he had Sky TV, but he didn't have the channel that carried the football. So he called the cable company or a guy who works with satellite TV, and within half an hour, this guy was out. And he was holding the aerial out of a window just so we could watch the match for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's that they always go the extra mile. They're such nice people. I've got a lot of friends, a lot of Iranian friends now.
Yeah, definitely. And it's actually, you mentioned football there, and football when we travel is something that it's that universal language, and as soon as people find out you're English, football. Like I ended up going to the Tehran derby when we were in Iran.
Really?
Yeah, it was wicked.
Wow.
And that is an interesting football match. It's got like a massive history, like of quite violent supporters on both sides, and a lot of there was apparently a lot of scandal surrounding games being fixed and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I was well excited to go, and it was an incredible experience. And it was an amazing game as well. It was won in the last, and to be honest, I suspect it may have been fixed because it was won in the last minute of extra time, and there was 6 minutes of extra time.
Really?
Yeah, so I was like, oh, this is not good. Anyway.
Did you sit with the fans who won or lost?
Yeah, with the ones who won.
Oh, so it was pretty good vibe then.
Yeah, I wore neutral grey. I was like, what colour are the teams playing in? And it was a classic derby as well. It was red versus blue. It was like Everton, Liverpool, City, United, whatever.
Yeah.
So it was wicked. But I hear what you're saying. We made loads of friends in Iran. Incredible country. How did your family feel about you going to Iran? Did they have worries about you taking on this trip?
I don't know if there was any more worries over Iran than anywhere else, but there was certainly a lot of worries about the whole trip. I grew up just with my mum and my brother. My brother was in the Royal Marines, so he certainly got a sense of adventure.
Yeah.
But my poor mum was in bits.
Yeah.
She's used to either him doing something silly like this or me doing something silly, but she never seems to, become numb to it. She still has that. I suppose it's a mother's prerogative just to constantly worry all the way through.
Yeah. What you need to do is take her on a trip.
I actually took her to China with me because it was one of her dreams to see the Great Wall of China and the Terracotta Warriors. So we flew into Beijing first, and I just took her around the sites. Then she flew home and I flew on to Shanghai. But yeah, I don't think I'm not getting a tandem bike, put it that way.
So, like psychologically, like undertaking a mammoth trip like this, and I know this isn't was it well, is this the first major challenge you've done, the cycling trip?
Nothing else I've done has lasted longer than 2 weeks.
So
I suppose if you're looking at it from a time frame point of view, then yes, it's the longest I was ever away from home. All the backpacking I've done was like a month or so. So but I was fine, to be honest. I never really felt lonely, I don't think. But solely down to just the technology. I think I spoke to people, if not every day, every other day. So it certainly took that element out of it. Some people, had a few people say you're not really doing it if you're speaking to people every day and stuff, but, the miles on the bike aren't any easy just because you're speaking to somebody. If anything, it's more of a pain because you've got to get off and update people all the time, whereas I just wanted to get on the bike and do the miles. And there's more of a social media pressure, especially when you're trying to raise money for charity. That's what it's all about.
I think certainly your social media presence was massive, and I know certainly if I was undertaking the same trip, I would need that support. Like I find all the cyclists I've talked to, they're a kind of different breed, and as much as I want to include cyclists and motorcyclists in this podcast, because I think it's really interesting to talk about the differences. There's certainly a massive difference between what you did and what we did. Like as far as what you put into it, what you get out of it, the reasons for doing it, and the physical differences. Like they're so massive, and the only thing that's similar is your bike's got wheels and our car's got wheels. That's about it.
I think you've got. Sorry, I think to do anything like that, like what you've done, what I've done, whether it's on a bike. You said earlier, a lot of people say they want to do this, but only so many people will. I think that, not to put me and you in a group and other people do it in a group, but I think you get to a certain point in life where you either do it or you don't. I think a lot of people have these dreams of wanting to do stuff like this, but I was never brave enough to leave my job because I did meet one cyclist along the way who was doing it for 8 years. He was a German guy, and he was just staying in couch surfing and warm showers. But I'm not brave enough to leave my job. I don't think. I know you and Emma did. So that's you've certainly got one up over me on that point, I think.
Maybe, but now the difference is we're back and trying to find our feet again, and we've had to restart our lives from zero again. So I don't know. I think. And initially when I set up the podcast, I was thinking, I only want to talk to people who've undertaken long trips. And then some guys in the US contacted me and were like, we've got quite an interesting story. Do you want to interview us? And he sent through some information. And they had just been on a 44-day overland car journey. And I was thinking, in the US as well, so in their own country, and I was thinking, do I want to interview these guys? I don't know. And then I looked into their story, and their story was incredible. Like they were retracing like a historical route, and I was like, actually, this is totally is valid. Like it has its place within what we do, and I understand that people can't have the luxury of ditching their jobs, selling their houses. People have commitments, people have families, mortgages, whatever, and these guys have all those things. They have jobs, family, mortgages, and so 44 days is all they can kind of muster to do a trip, and that has as much validity as taking 4 years off to do a trip. So I'm going to speak to those guys in a couple of weeks. It should be really interesting, I think. And just from a different perspective, most of the people I've spoken to so far have been Brits. So, speak to some Americans about travelling in their own country, it'll be interesting for us to hear that.
It's certainly a varied enough country to warrant such a long challenge, I think.
Yeah, and certainly they have such wilderness areas literally on their doorstep, which we don't have the luxury in Europe. With the exception of maybe nipping down to Morocco. So after you'd completed your cycle trip, when you got back into Europe, did you nail through Europe just to get home? Did it feel like you're on your doorstep?
I got to Istanbul and I had around 6 or 7 days off then.
Yeah.
I managed to lose both of my bank cards. I only had 2 bank cards with me. I lost both of them, so so there was a bit of a scramble to get money to me. And as I left Istanbul, I actually had some friends meet me in Budapest. Around 6 or 7 friends flew out to meet me, and we just had a incredibly drunken weekend.
Yeah.
Which was much needed. You when I met you two, I think you were the first people I sat and had a beer with in 60, 70 days.
Yeah.
And I was just so happy to meet not necessarily Brits, but just English speakers who you can have a bit of a laugh and joke with. I think keeping morale up on that kind of trip's pretty hard. But yeah, as I got into Europe, I've hammered it all the way to Budapest and then all the way to Rotterdam. But I did meet a few people along the way. A lot of people got in touch on Twitter and wanted me to come and meet them. So in Sofia, in Bulgaria, I actually met some football hooligans, which was interesting.
Oh, really?
It's certainly not something I would, ever be involved in ever. But yeah, I went to one of their football matches, and they're just so incredibly intense. And this football hooligan gang, the CSK, I can't remember what they're called, CSK Ultras maybe, but no other team in that league will take fans to that ground because of what happens. So all that's there is just the CSK Sofia fans, and it's just got to the point where they just sing at each other now quite violently because they've got nobody else to fight with. And I was just stood in the middle of it with like the heads of these ultras, and I was recording videos, and I wasn't getting involved in anything other than just watching the football really.
Yeah, but it's interesting though that when you kind of undertake these kind of trips, like I said just before, I ended up going to watch the Tehran Derby. You just because you're a foreigner in another country, you quite often end up in these really kind of strange predicaments that you just wouldn't ever end up in typically. So were there any other kind of times when that kind of strange kind of, I don't know.
Those fans then actually went to, like, what I've realised with these ultras now is if there's 2 teams in a big city, they will go and support one of them around Eastern Europe, so they'll be affiliated to these clubs even though they don't directly support them. So then I've only found out this since, I found out it when I was there, but the biggest apparently hooligan football game in European football is in Belgrade between Red Star and Partizan. So I was going there anyway, and it just so happened that the day it was their derby. So I turned up, and I was with I met the Sofia fans. I had to cycle 150 miles the day before, and then 100 miles the day of the derby to make it in time. And I went with them, and it was incredibly violent. If anybody's listening to this, if you just go on and Google the Belgrade Derby, and the images are just terrifying. It looks like something out of a Mad Max film. It's totally bizarre. There's just a lot of unnecessary hatred. It's I'm personally just putting it down as a box ticked. Something you'll experience, something you'll never go back and do though.
Yeah. It is. I don't know. Sometimes you experience just weird things. I've had to. We ended up and witnessing just bizarre stupidity as well. Like just you see some of the most insane things, and like you're currently in India. And for us, we travelled through India, and India was just one of the most insane countries. And every day I would see something that would just blow my mind. And it doesn't matter how long you're in India, every day you'll see something.
I don't envy it driving through this country. It is absolutely insane on the road. It's terrifying.
The driving was nuts. But just for example, I'll give you 2 instances where we saw just insane things. And this was my second day in India. And I'd never been to India before. Emma's been to India quite a few times. But this was our second day in India, right? We saw a cow with 6 legs. And I was just like, what is that? And 2 women were leading it through this village, and they had painted it like purple and green and whatever, and they'd stuck like tin foil on its horns, and it had some crown on, and it had like bells hanging off it everywhere, and it had these two just grotesque floppy kind of limbs hanging off its back, and I was just like, this is insane. Any other country, that animal would have been put down at birth, but in India, it's the holiest of holy. You know, it's like it's the most special cow you will ever witness. And that was my second day in India, and I was just like, this country is insane. And then just another example, and this was after we'd been in India like 3 months, I think. We were driving on a motorway, which I'd use the term motorway quite loosely. But there was a holy man rolling down the road in the middle of the motorway. He's got his orange robes on. He's kind of wrapped up. He's a bit padded on his elbows and round his waist, and he's just rolling down the highway.
Oh, nobody bats an eyelid either. No. Everybody around it. It's just like it's the most this happens every day. Which was there.
Just incredible. And then I looked him up. I googled him, and it turns out he's the rolling Baba. He's a holy man, and just to show his devotion, he doesn't walk anywhere. He rolls everywhere. He's literally. Just incredible. And not to belittle cycling from China to England, but this guy, right? He's rolled across India like 3 times. And India's a pretty big country. He doesn't walk. He rolls up to like 15 miles a day, and that's all he does. He just rolls around everywhere.
He must be filthy because it's not the cleanest of countries.
I don't know, it's just hilarious. We stopped to take a photograph. I was gobsmacked. I was just like, wow, this is incredible. Stopped to take a photograph, and he carried on rolling, and he just kind of put his arm out like he wanted money. He was like, and he didn't even stop rolling. I was like,
I wonder how he copes with stairs.
Yeah, it's just incredible. So those kind of unexpected kind of things I don't know, if you travel in this way, I think you're always guaranteed to end up in really odd predicaments.
I suppose that would be a good time to mention the fact that it was my first day in Turkey. Actually, it was in Eastern Turkey. I actually got held up at gunpoint by Kurdish rebels, which was I was cycling uphill all day yet again. The whole trip felt like it was cycling uphill, to be honest. And just as I hit the top of this hill, I cycled round the corner, and I think it was 4 or 5 Kurdish rebels there with automatic guns, and they just got me off my bike. I was just screaming at them, Britannia, Britannia, Britannia. I handed them my passport and kept me there for around 5 minutes, and I found out later that day, because earlier that day I'd seen just waves and waves of like heavily armoured vehicles and tanks driving past me, and there was around 4 or 5 military helicopters out as well.
Yeah.
And it wasn't at Istanbul. I sat down and investigated a bit more, and the Kurdish rebels have killed around, I think it was 11 police officers earlier that day. So yeah, apparently that time of year, every day there's a lot of attacks because it was the anniversary of the first Kurdish act of terrorism. But that wasn't one of the better moments, but it was certainly interesting. It certainly makes for a good story anyway.
Yeah. It can be quite intimidating when you come across the first person you see with a gun, and especially when you see people who aren't wearing uniforms with like heavy artillery. Then that can be really intimidating. And again, you just never know who, you know. I don't know. We had one border crossing from Kyrgyzstan into Tajikistan, and it's way up in the Pamirs and the Pamir Highway. So I think it's the highest border crossing in the world, I think. And we got up there, and everyone who worked at the border were military, but no one was wearing uniform. They're all like wearing tracksuits and like sweaters, but they're all carrying around machine guns. And you're just like, it's just really difficult to distinguish who actually worked at the border, who was official, and who you should be handing your passport to. I don't know. It's just unusual. How did you find the border crossings on your bike? Do they basically stop and search you, or do they just think you're a bit insane and carry on?
every bag. There was my worst experience at border crossing was actually entering Iran, and it turned out to be totally fine. But my first interaction with anybody from Iran was headbutting one of the security guards. It was like a like a Monty Python sketch. I had an immigration form. He passed me a pen. He dropped a pen. We both bent over to get it, and I just headbutted him on the bridge of the nose. And just so much fear went into my body. It's like, well, that's me done for. That's me for 10 years in a prison. But luckily, like, you know, dude, just like anybody else, all his friends were just like pointing and laughing, and he felt a little bit awkward, and I felt a little bit awkward. But yeah, just so much fear went in that first. Other than, do you remember the magicians that we met? The young, I think they were Austrian guys.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I recorded some videos of them doing some magic when we were in Dushanbe, and as I entered, I think it was Uzbekistan, like these border police just take your laptops off you and take your phone off you and demand your password. So yeah, they were just going through like my camera roll and watch the video of them doing the magic, and then his face, he was just totally bewildered, and he made me try to tell him how the magician done the trick, and I had absolutely no idea. I don't think, you wouldn't imagine magic's done much over there, really, would you? Magic tricks, card tricks especially.
That's nuts. That mentality as well, that was the first time we'd experienced that, actually travelling through Central Asia, where they kind of, at customs, they take your phone and just look through every photograph. Yeah, it's really invasive. It's actually horrible. It's
it really is. And you're doubting yourself. You know, you haven't been on anything suspicious. But there's another guy we met, wasn't it, called Ollie, the guy from down south, and he was reading a article about ISIS as he approached the border, and he didn't know anything was going to happen. So the first thing they seen when he handed him his phone was an article on ISIS. So he had a little bit of a panicky moment as well. But yeah, it's unnecessary. Well, I don't know, from our point of view, it's unnecessary. They obviously have their reasons for doing it, but it's certainly not the greatest welcome to a country.
No. And then actually, when you came through Central Asia, did you go through Turkmenistan?
Yes. Yeah. I was going to ask about this just bizarre country. I made a massive mistake, actually, because you only have a 5-day transit visa, don't you?
Yeah.
So I thought I was going from A to B, the quickest route, well, the route in and then the quickest route out as possible, but I unbeknown to me, put an extra 100 miles onto my journey by picking a further border. I actually left through Ashgabat, which...
okay.
Did you go through Ashgabat, or did
no, you we weren't allowed. We were dictated straight across the country, A to B, really far over in the east, yeah. And we didn't know how strict they were. And when we looked at the map, we were like, let's just go down here. This route's slightly shorter. Thinking it was part of the old Silk Road. And it was more direct, but it wasn't the main road. So we ended up taking it. The road was appalling, and it took us an extra day. And then
was this the road where it's like a roller coaster and it was just going up and down and up and down because it's supposed to a cyclist?
No, it wasn't up. It wasn't big up and down. It was just massive potholes. Like it was really slow going. It was really slow. And then we got to the end of the road, and then there was a barrier across it after like a 2-day drive. And then the military came out and looked at our piece of paper where we should have driven, and he was like, "You've gone the wrong way. You're supposed to go the dictated route." And we were like, "Oh no." Well, one of two things is probably going to happen. He's probably going to tell us to turn around and go back, or B, we're going to get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And thankfully, the fella on the gate was sound. He just lifted up the gate and goes, "Right, carry on your way, but join up. Don't tell anyone you've been this way."
I did not meet anybody with that sense of understanding through the 5 days I was in Turkmenistan. Ashgabat was I'd probably never go to a city like it. It was like Vegas, but with nobody there.
Yeah.
It was just like these incredible buildings. Like they would be like a prize monument in any other city, and there was just road upon road upon road upon road of them. And I think in the city there was only around 15 or so hotels when I was there.
Yeah.
And not a single one of them would give me a room because I didn't look or smell good at this point because I'd cycled 24 hours to get there because I'd put this extra 100 miles into my journey. I spent around 4 hours just cycling around the hotels, and they were incredibly expensive as well. They were all like $200 a night.
Yeah.
I think they were just trying to price me out of it, and it got to the last hotel, and I asked, and they said no again. So I just said, she spoke English. It was quite lucky. She spoke English. I said, well, I'm going to wait in the lobby until there's a room available. So I just sat in the lobby for around 3 hours, and eventually she come over and said, okay, we found you a room. But yeah, the country, I wasn't allowed to take photos anywhere on the whole route.
It's bizarre.
Well, yeah, it's no. I've never been to North Korea, but I imagine it's exactly like that because it's just an incredible dictatorship, and yeah, it's not a nice place to be.
No, it's interesting though because again, those kind of preconceptions everyone knows about North Korea, but if you mention Turkmenistan to anyone, firstly they probably have trouble pointing it out on a map, and secondly they don't know how repressive it is, and it is actually in the Press Freedom Index. It's only second behind North Korea.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I'm not at all,
And we kind of entered with a bit of naivety. We hadn't really read too much about it. We knew we would only get a 5-day transit visa, and we knew they were pretty strict. But it wasn't until after we left the country that I started to read a lot about the leader and the political situation. And I was just like, man, this country is insane.
They're like banned car radios, and he like renamed days of the week after his wife and things like that. It's just bizarre. And I met a few people along the way, like in these little belt tents where I was able to rest at some point, and they were absolutely fantastic. Again, it's just the political system there forces people to behave, and maybe perhaps a way that they don't want to behave.
Yeah, it's certainly a shame, and that's one thing we've experienced in every country. You have to separate the politics from the people, basically.
Yeah.
Because generally the people at ground level are just incredibly friendly and welcoming.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then racing back through Europe, then when you got back home, what kind of welcome did you get back home?
Well, we docked in. Oh, I should tell you the story. Actually, I when I arrived at Rotterdam, I just entered Rotterdam into my phone navigation, and I thought, as soon as I get to Rotterdam, it'll only be, a short bike ride to the harbour. And I didn't leave myself much time, and I got to Rotterdam, I think it was like an extra 25 miles outside of the city, the port, and I had just over an hour to get there. So I just turned off all my devices and just had my head down, cycling into the wind, and I was convinced I was going to miss the boat. And as soon as I got to the border, I was the last one to get on the ship, and they nearly didn't let me because my passport had a little bit of a rip in the back. It was right by the photo. And he just said, anybody could have put their photo in this, it's invalid, we can't let you on the ship. And then it was a bit of a good cop, bad cop routine, really. One of them asked what I was doing, I explained. Then he went and spoke to the bad cop, and he let me on. So, I was exhausted at that point. I had €20 left in my name, and the buffet was €19. I think I could do that. And I just went and just ate my weight and just junk food, and then slept all the way to Hull. And then at Hull, I had around, I think it was about 15 people meet me on bikes, and they cycled the last 2 days with me. Yeah. Which was, brilliant. Yeah, I managed to throw the bags off my bike into a transit van that we had supporting us, which was good. I felt like Chris Froome cycling them last 2 days.
Excellent. And then you got back to Liverpool, and what was the welcome like in Liverpool?
Oh, it was unbelievable. It was right in front of the iconic live buildings, and there was about 500 people there, friends, family, media, people I'd never met. It was truly bizarre. I, to be honest, I can't remember it, if I'm totally honest. I just remember I went to hug my mum, and some other woman just jumped in front of my mum. I didn't have a clue who this woman was. And, I was just standing there getting selfies with people for the best part of an hour.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty reserved person, really. It's, when will that ever happen to me again? I'm glad it'll only happen once, to be honest. It was a bit strange, but after that I got whisked away to Everton's football ground, and the Liverpool Everton match was on that day, and I was like pitch side before kick-off, and they offered us seats to sit there and watch it, but I just wanted to go and have some beers with friends and family at that point, so we just went to a bar, all of us.
I think your trip, certainly the charity aspect of your trip, meant that a lot of people got behind you, and that was really incredible to see. And it must have been quite a strange experience for you, because although all these people are kind of with you on the journey, you're still spending every day on your own on the bike, and it must be quite a surreal kind of feeling to know that all these people are kind of rooting for you and getting behind you. And you became a bit of a celebrity in Liverpool, right?
Yeah, well, I suppose so, yeah. It was which I started having people coming up to me in town and shaking my hand and stuff and saying, "Are you the cycling scout?" And yeah, it was bizarre. It was, yeah. I'm not sure I felt too comfortable with the term celebrity, but yeah, I managed to win some cool awards after that. I won the Pride of Merseyside award, which was good, and I won the Jaguar Land Rover Employee of the Year, and I've just found out while I'm in India actually that I've been nominated for Pride of Britain. I think they're voting for that happening now. I'm not sure how people vote or if you vote at all. It might be a panel. But yeah, it's some cool recognition, I suppose. I've bought a little trophy cabinet just to wind friends up more than anything. Ask them to come in upstairs and see the trophy cabinet. You just think I'm full of myself now.
Yeah, it was funny because we added, obviously after we met you, add you on Facebook and stuff, and it was funny to see the banter on your personal Facebook page between you and your mates. And there was a lot of ripping going on, which is pretty funny. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. My friends are pretty brutal, which is good. It keeps me along the bike ride. Like, it was just so nice to talk about things that went the bike ride. About hearing about their lives and stuff, and taking the mick out of each other. It helps.
Yeah. And okay, and then since you've been back, you've done a couple of other challenges, right, as well. And these ones I don't know too much about.
It's just one main one really. There was the 5 marathons in 5 days in the desert in Jordan. It was from Amman to Petra, and it was only 5 days long, but it was 10 times worse than a bike ride. It was the least fun I've ever had. It was the most difficult thing I've ever done. It was just no way enjoyable at all. Probably didn't help that I didn't really train much for it, and I had acute bronchitis just before I'd done it. It was God, honest to God, it's all right cycling because no matter where you are, the scenery can change pretty quickly. And 5 days in the desert running, I felt. I hate thinking about it. Like, my body's suffering now. My knees are destroyed, my feet are destroyed, and I haven't recovered from it mentally, I don't think, because it was the hardest 5 days of my life, I think.
That's
and nobody followed that. Nobody followed that one. Bike ride for 150 days, and you'd enjoy yourself, and everybody's following it. And this bloody run for 5 days, where I was crying most days, it's the worst time of my life. And I resented people after that.
Do you think that your cycle trip, though, do you think that prepared you mentally to some degree, or was it just testing yourself to a new level?
Yeah, it was a totally newfound respect for people who do these ultra marathons. I don't know how it's possible. I think the most I did in one day was 29 miles, and God, I mean, like, I was just like sleeping on the side of the road, and every now and then I'd find like a little shop where I could stock up on water, because I was running alongside a highway, so you'd have like petrol stations and stuff, and I'd just grab a few hours in the doorway and then just keep going. But I managed to sleep in a mosque one night, which was cool. I'm good to let me, but I'm always, well, I'm sure my girlfriend would probably say I'm pretty hard-headed. Like, I won't give in anything, and I'm too stubborn too. So I knew it complete whether it took me longer or not. But I didn't even enjoy Petra. I just went right to Petra, took one photo, and then just went. I was just so annoyed and just wanted to go home so much. I didn't even look around Petra.
Sorry.
Now I'm back, it seems like a massive waste. Like, definitely not going back to Jordan, because there's too many bad memories there. And I just went there and got one selfie and then left. Like the worst tourist ever.
Sorry, I'm laughing, but I shouldn't be laughing because it sounds like you went for absolute hell. But
I'll never do a running challenge again, I can tell you that much.
So, like, and I remember when we bumped into each other, you were taking kind of a great interest in our car, which I found quite funny. And I wasn't sure if it was because you'd spent, I don't know how many days at that point, probably about 60, 70 days or something, probably even longer on your bike. Whether you were just envious of not having to use your legs too much, or whether
I don't know whether it's subconsciously, but before I knew we were doing this interview obviously, but I've just spent the car journey back from the plant where I'm working to the hotel just looking again at doing, because watching you guys totally inspired me. It's something I'm definitely going to do in the future.
Yeah,
it seems I mean, the BB that you had just done the pop-up tent. I still look at that. I'd say that tent website probably once a month just to see if there's new stuff there, because honestly, it was absolute envy, because it looked so luxurious and compared to my little 2-man tent, and I'm very, very envious. And I'm sure you've probably talked a little bit about the cool little setup that you managed to have on there with all your batteries and all your boxes, and everything just seemed to fit and work perfectly in there. Whereas with my bike, it didn't.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because it's funny, because it's like I used to cycle loads when I was younger, and I'm well keen to do a cycling trip. I like the challenge. I think I'd enjoy it, but my main concern is, and it's something I've spoken to with other cyclists, is that I don't think I could handle that much time kind of inside my own head. And that's the thing I'd have trouble with. And even if you're cycling with other people, you're normally typically like 100 meters ahead or behind, or whatever. So it's not like you're sat there chatting all day long. So that's I don't know. I'll see. But having travelled in that way on a bike, is it something you'd do again, or would you contemplate, moving up onto a motorbike or moving up onto a car? Would you always contemplate doing another cycling trip?
Yeah, I'd definitely do another cycling trip, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't do something by car. I'm 31. I've got plenty of time to do more challenges, but my next challenge actually is a cycling one, although it's not really touring. I've always read like the Guinness Book of Records when I was a kid, and the little challenge I've set myself next is to break the world record for cycling across the Sahara. It's currently 13 days, and I think to be honest, I've only picked this record because it's a pretty beatable record. And I've just realised people are going to listen to this, and I'm going to go and check on it, maybe somebody's going to beat me. I didn't think this through. But yeah, that's going to be my next challenge. That's going to happen early next year.
Okay.
So yeah, if anybody's listening to that, please just let me just have this one. You can beat it after me, as long as it was a world record holder for a month at least. I can take that.
And will there be a charity aspect towards that as well, then? Or?
Yeah. So with Charlie's, like all the fundraising we've always done ran parallel with what Charlie's needed.
Yeah.
And obviously the most recent thing was the £180,000 to get him to Seattle for the treatment.
Yeah.
And we raised that in 4 weeks, because there's a massive team of us, and people were working around the clock doing all these kind of crazy challenges and fundraising nights. But the reality is, some people aren't going to have these big groups of friends and big groups of work colleagues or family. So we're all going to set up our own charity called Charlie's Chance, and all the fundraising from this world record attempt will be going to that.
Yeah. That's cool. That's really cool. So, when you're at work, then, do you think your challenges have inspired other people to take on challenges as well? Then, or
I do get a lot of messages like saying, I know you've done this. How can I do this now? I'm not sure if anybody's ever followed through on them. I'd like to think they have.
Yeah.
But it's that thing again, isn't it? Like, I'd really like to, and maybe just seeing me, kind of inspired somebody to do it, and I hope they did. I hope they raise money. I know a lot of people on the back of it have went and ran the London Marathon and a Great North Run for Anthony Nolan, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And a lot of people hundreds of people on the back of it signed up to the Anthony Nolan register to donate bone marrow, which is it was the aim, to be honest, to get more people on the register and get money for the charity. So I do consider it as a success from that point of view.
Well, I think what you achieved was incredible. To be honest, I have so much respect for people on bikes. Certainly through that terrain, like we bumped into a few cyclists through Central Asia, and you know, I had trouble driving my car there. Do you know what I mean? And like, I'm looking at some fella cycling the other way, or you know, and just thinking, I've just driven up this mountain, and that was hard work. And this fella's just cycled up there. So I have massive respect for you, mate. Like you wouldn't believe. And then on top of that, all the stuff you've done, raising money for Charlie is just incredible. It was for me. I was just like, after we'd met you, and then I looked at your site and learnt all about the charity and following you on Twitter and just seeing how many people got behind you, and I was like, yeah, that's nice. It's heartwarming, isn't it? It's like, without getting too sentimental about it all, it's just nice that knowing that there are people in the world who are just good people.
Yeah, I can't take any credit for that social media thing. Like, I had two friends, Andy and Sally, back home who'd done all of that. Like, I pretty much didn't write anything on Facebook.
Yeah, but in all fairness, you were doing the hard bit.
Yeah, well, if you'd ask Andy, he likes to say he was doing the hard bit. You know, he tells everybody he calls himself my campaign manager. But yeah. But yeah, I had luckily enough to have a PR team helping with me date on the websites and stuff along the way, and arranged interviews before and afterwards. So that just raised the profile of the ride, and obviously got more money for the charity.
And are you using the same website now for future challenges, or?
Yeah, it hasn't been updated for a while because I'm only just figuring out this next challenge now. But it's cyclingscouser.com and all over social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, Cycling Scouser as well. So if anybody does want to read up or watch any of the videos of me making a fool out of myself, then yeah, that's where you can go to watch them all.
Yeah, cool. I'll certainly put all the links on the page as well. Okay, well, I think we've just hit the 1 hour mark, and I certainly don't want to take up any more of your time, but mate, it's been absolutely wicked catching up with you again.
Yeah, great to hear from you, man.
And thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
I'm eternally thankful to be able to host this podcast and to meet so many inspirational people, so thank you for listening. Be sure to follow the Cycling Scouser on Twitter, so that's twitter.com/Cycling Scouser, and check out his website, cyclingscouser.com. He's one of the most sincere and inspirational people I know. He's absolutely incredible, so please, let's get behind him for his next challenge. I'm not sure how voting works for the Pride of Britain Awards, but let's hope he wins so he can get some more silverware for his trophy cabinet. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and review us on iTunes and Stitcher by searching the Overlanding Podcast. And please check out our website, theoverlandingpodcast.com, where you'll find supporting information, photos and links for Andrew Rogerson, aka the Cycling Scouser. We love to engage with our listeners, so please find us on Facebook /The Overlanding Podcast and on Twitter @Overland Podcast. You can help support the show just by listening and telling others about it. If you like what you've heard, please share it with your overlanding buddies and help spread the word. If you're an overlander yourself and have an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. We'd especially like to hear from female overlanders and families. So if you've got kids and been on an adventure, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at aroundtheworldin800days@mail.com, subject heading podcast interview. Okay, until next week, don't get lost.